Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this.
Hi everyone, my name's Katie Crane. Welcome to another episode of the Pilates Lounge Podcast. Now, you guys know that this year we are rolling through a series, like each topic has its own series. So at the moment, we are touching on the nervous system, speaking to people who work with neuro in general. So I've invited onto the show Nick Moss. Nick calls himself a nervous system oriented therapist, and you potentially have seen him on. I found him on Instagram. He's got some awesome information on there. If you want to go and scour his page, I'll definitely share it with you. But like I said in our pre-talk, Nick, you're the expert, not me. So you want to say g'day to our listeners and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So a little bit about me. So if you follow me, my business name is Functional Neuro Health. So at Functional Neuro Health on Instagram. You jump on that, you'll see what I'm all about. That's my main channel there. So who am I and how did I get here? Well, it's a long story. Well, actually, my first career was I tend to start this way. My first career was actually in the military, in the Australian Army. And that was a job that, you had to be quite fit for, all those sort of things. But it doesn't really translate well to normal life, not what I was doing anyway. So when I went to transition out of the Army in the mid to late 2000s, around 2008 region, I just sort of stumbled into personal training and got into that side of things because it was a natural progression, and tried all the normal bodybuilding and the CrossFit things, and then it very fortuitously in the fitness first education system at the time, they had some really good Paul Chek trained professionals who are holistic kind of practitioners, and their focus was a lot around like back pain and core function. So it's actually very much ties into the Pilates original origins of Pilates. And I started to focus on the inner units of the core and just corrective exercise and breathing and things like that, and bringing these people out of pain that had been in pain for years. And I was only like within my first year of being a trainer. So what I thought personal training was going to be for me and what it ended up being, and then moved me onto this path that I'm in now, was from that moment of seeing when you went to the root cause of what was happening with someone and just worked on it. And we would work on it over quite a long period of time, over months. And I was able to bring people who had no strength and were in pain into, out of pain, and they're stronger than they've ever been. I was like, wow. But I only knew a little bit. And I had a bit of a sort of, I suppose, a nervous breakdown post-career. A lot of guys do it. That led me to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of sort of inner work, interpersonal work. And then I knew I wanted to get back into healthcare somehow, something holistic, and stumbled into kinesiology. Someone told me about it. I had no idea what it was. Weird world of kinesiology. I wanted to do sports kinesiology because I wanted to still be more sort of movement focused and working with athletes. I thought I was going to work with professional teams and stuff like that. I have worked with athletes, but just privately. And went down that path. And as soon as I went down the kinesiology path, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm seeing the body, the nervous system, and how it controls the body. And I was like, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. And sought further study in sort of manual therapy and myotherapy, did a bachelor's degree in that. And at the same time as doing that, I caught the neuro bug. That was probably like, over a decade ago. And functional neurology, which is the study of the nervous system, was just starting to creep into sections of movement and manual therapy sort of practitioners. And the origins of that are really back to the origins of applied kinesiology, and also a guy named Professor Ted Carrick in the US started to apply what was in the knowledge of the nervous system practically, as opposed to like a medical neurologist, which is a medical neurologist is a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I've never claimed to be. I'm not part of medicine. Medical neurologists, they're designed to actually find neurological pathologies, which is, you can maybe see this in blood tests, in specific neurological testing. And what they do is they basically tell people what's wrong. Here you go, this is what's going on. And the person goes, all right, what do I do next? I don't know. And so the functional neurologist is the solution to that, which is like, okay, let's have a look at actually what's driving things here. And so that journey started, over a decade ago. And I was in my mind, back of my mind, I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can, however long it takes, to master the nervous system, because I know it is underpinning all functions. And I knew it was going to be a hard task when I took it on, and it's probably harder than I thought still, but now looking back with my own system and everything, it is definitely worth it, because for me as a movement pro and manual therapist and someone that always likes to find out what's going on, I feel like it's sort of X-ray vision in a way. You can sort of see things that maybe other people can't see because of the way you're looking at the body. And it just really starts to put things together. So yeah, I've never really looked back. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've created my own clinical system. And it's multidisciplinary, where you attract all sorts of types of practitioners, including movement professionals and manual therapists, kinesiologists, and some medical professionals as well. So that's where I'm at. And I've just landed in this position of being the guy that's now teaching it, after standing on the shoulders of some giants, and now other people are standing on my shoulders. And it's a really cool thing to pass on that knowledge to practitioners and see their results just skyrocket, and their confidence levels, and obviously their ability to, make a good income from their practice as well. So that's where I'm at. And it's been a massive journey putting my education together. I'm now refining it all. So it's a full-time job, but very thankful that I get to do it. So yeah, that's me right now.
So when you first really got interested in it, was it from, like, you said, like you had a nervous breakdown, or you're overstressed, which I agree, you guys tend to suffer that a lot. I worked with Robertson Barracks for about 8 years and saw a lot of people trying to get back into the civilian life and not knowing where they fit, and being coming from a system that didn't treat them as people either.
No,
What is
you're a tool.
Oh, totally. You're a number. Nobody even knew each other's first names. So it was wild.
I
But
still remember my numbers now. Sorry. Yeah.
really, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I loved working with guys from the barracks. Hey, just seeing them actually find themselves again. But
Yeah.
was that a big driver for you? Like, wanting to figure out for yourself what was going on.
I think it was more subconscious at the time. Now looking back, I can see you look back and you see the logic, you see it all tie together. But I was, if I really, so, I did, 6 years, 6.5, almost 7 years full time as an infantry soldier. So you're basically a professional athlete and carry heavy things and shoot things, blow things up. It's a great boys' job, good fun, But then you leave, because I was like, okay, I don't want to be institutionalized. I don't want to do 20 years and then go, hey, what did Nick do? And he was just he just did the army thing. I was like, there's something in me. It's like, hey, this is just a stepping stone. There's something more here. When I look back, it's given me a lot of resilience to be able to achieve what I've achieved now. But there's a culture shock to go in and become that, and then there's a bigger culture shock to try and reintegrate. That in and of itself is traumatic. But when you couple that with, I'd had many head injuries, TBIs, right? So basically, post-concussions or concussions can create PTSD-like symptoms. And when you combine that with the army lifestyle of lots of drinking, and a bit more than that, I'll just say that, post leaving as well, because it was like, okay, I've been in this institution for a while. Now I'm out. Now I'm free. Yay, I'm working for myself as a personal trainer. Yeah, I can do what I want. But I was still hanging around with all the boys and having great times. And then as I started to try to individuate again, that's when like everything just fell to shit, basically. lots of, I started to lose contact with mates in the army and lots of different friend groups and relationship breakdowns, things it's like everything happened at once, and it just sort of smacked me. And so there was a physiological, there was psychological, there was spiritual things going on, and yeah, I was depressed, fully depressed. I was actually like, I had suicidal sort of ideation. I couldn't help it; it was just there. But now I know the mechanisms as to why that was there.
Mm.
And yeah, it was basically forced into it. You know, something has to shift. Something has to change. I have to not be who I was and shift into something else. And at the same time, I knew it was through my healing intuitively that I was also meant to help people, and in a much deeper way than just on the gym floor. Nothing wrong with that. You can still create amazing change for people in that way. But I was like, there's something deeper here where I'm really meant to create deep healings. And obviously I knew that I had to do that first to myself. So yeah, that's when starting with the kinesiology training, in that training was really good, because we would work on each other and you bring real stuff. And sometimes the teacher would, just expose you in front of everyone, which was very, very daunting for me, but it was really healing as well. And so that was like, okay, just let it out, let people in, let it be seen. And then alongside that, I was doing a lot of meditation, going to meditation retreats, things like that. So I moved from, army, very fit, CrossFit, the guy in the gym that people would look at and go, that guy's a monster, as in like the intensity that I was working out at, to complete system shutdown, adrenal collapse. So I couldn't work out like I used to having to meditate and do gentle restorative type movements, slowly building my capacity back to now. I feel as fit as I was back then, but no pain, no tension, things like that, because it's been wound out of my system over the last 15 years or so. So that's the journey. Yeah. So obviously I think a lot of people do come into this, probably some of your listeners here, yourself, and from our own pain, our own suffering. And if we can transcend that. And through that, I realized, I do have a brain, there's a brain there. And it's because I couldn't use it properly because I was in survival. And then it's a particular type of brain, which is a research, analysis, putting systems together type brain, which I didn't realize for a while. And then now that I'm putting that to use to create the systems for other people, other professionals, clients, etc., based on all the learnings that I've had. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, it definitely was from a sort of a dark night of the soul. And I look back at that period as the most painful to go through, but the most fruitful in terms of how it oriented me to the path that I'm on now. So
Metaphor for life, isn't it? So when you
100%.
talk about, thank you for sharing that. I think I always feel like it's really important to put your story into context, because nobody falls into this stuff. Well, like, you kind of feel like you've fallen into it, but you're not really. I think we all fall into serving other people through our own suffering or our own experience. But when you talk about, that you feel like, so you were super strong, doing CrossFit and all that, I think of that as really, it's really aggressive kind of workout, which isn't bad,
Yang
like
masculine, yeah.
Right, but it serves its purpose for sure. But then you turn to things like meditation, you're learning your kinesiology, and obviously going kind of swapping into that more parasympathetic kind of experience. But you said that that you're kind of like, you wound all of that tension out of your system. What does that look like? Like, how is that through movement, or is that through something else? Could you explain that a little bit?
Through everything I've tried. And so so obviously it started by, if I was already excessively yang, masculine, fast, everything's intense, I think I'm always going to be that's who I am, right? But there's it's putting intensity on your own system. And so obviously that's excessive and that's imbalanced in the yang overactive perspective. So I have to find that balance. So I have to actually go in the opposite direction to really balance. And it's almost like stop, then slowly start moving overall, right? So that what that looks like is, okay, well, I can't do that type of workout. I can't do that yet. I need to focus on breathing. So just literally for a while, it was walking and breathing, just long walks. That's very good for processing things as well. And then nasal focused breathing, cadence breathing, like breath holds, things like that. And I couldn't believe how impactful that was. And then learning how to actually meditate in terms of, I did a few of the 10-day meditation retreats where you're just focusing on your nose for like 3 days and then focusing on the sensation. So being able to actually be with the sensations in your body without shifting. So instead of always looking out there for the answers, just coming back in. And so what I was just building it. It's actually okay to be still, and in stillness there can be a lot of change. So I had to override my normal reflexes, which is to be very active. And then once I felt the life force energy coming back in, which to be honest took a couple of years initially, then I was like, and so what I would do before that is, I get energy, I'll use it. I get energy. That's what a lot of people do with chronic fatigue and things like that. No, you don't have energy because your system's exhausted. You need to stop, fill the gas tank. And that's what I was doing. It took me a couple of years to fill the gas tank because I had the army career, partying, pretty rough teenage years as well. A lot of football, things like that, and other things. Body had been through a lot. And so I had to build that capacity. And that's what I did over a few years. And then now it's slowly increasing the threshold rather than, oh, great, I've got energy. Let's go and do a heavy deadlift session. No. Slowly increase the threshold. And that was probably most of my 30s. And then it was like towards my, I'm 43 now. Yeah, by my late 30s to 40s, then it was, okay, now we're doing movements. Now we're restoring proper biomechanical function. There's some movements called the cogs, which is, from a system anatomy and motion that some of you guys would have heard of, Gary Ward. And I was looking at that stuff in my practice as well. So I was also developing my practice at this time as well, and nervous system and everything. I also realized that the more I balanced myself, how that fed into how I was as a practitioner with my clients, of course. And then the more balanced I got, the better results I got, the better my brain worked, more space I could hold. So yeah, it was like cogs, getting the pelvis rib cage, cranium all aligned, working on the feet. And then now into the neuro stuff, looking at the primitive reflexes, which is one of the things I really teach. The primitive reflexes are your base level survival system. And actually at the base level of the movement system as well. So I had this right-sided hip and lower back pain that radiate around through the TFL sort of area, around the back, through the glutes, and up and through the lower back for like 10 years. And I would do, people get massage, different treatments, different types of corrective exercise. It would go away, come back, go away, come back. It was definitely impacted to stress. But I'll never forget it was, my late 30s, and so 5 or 6 years ago. And it was a combination of getting my foot working correctly, getting my rib cage moving correctly, and then the one that really clicked it was working on a reflex called the ATNR, which is the asymmetric tonic neck riding reflex, which is about left-right integration, both in the brain and in the body. So very much walking. And I was like, oh my God, I can feel that. Now that hip is actually moving properly. It's just boom. And then I started to be able to walk properly without pain. Then I could run. So I went from, when I'd go for a run, when I was in that period, I was in pain, and I'd slap the floor. I'd walk past people, run past people super loud. Now I'll run past people and it's super quiet because the biomechanics are all sort of corrected. So it all feeds in with everything else. So If you work on your biomechanics, your nervous system is in a better position. If your brain is calm, if you start clearing through the emotional stuff that you have to go through, beliefs, things like that, traumas, each little thing that you do kind of empties that threat or that stress bucket. And so every time you empty it, you get more bandwidth. And that's what happened over, probably my 30s, from like 32 to, late 30s. That was just restoration.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time as studying a lot and developing a practice. But personally for myself, it was like project restoration.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I feel better now in my body and my mind than I did in my 20s. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Could you please explain to our listeners what the primitive reflex is and how you might?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's explain what it is first.
Yeah. I did a workshop for Pilates practitioners probably about 7 or 8 years ago in Melbourne with the movementality guys.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Reflexes, but yeah,
Great studio.
yeah, Rob.
Yeah, they're in
Yeah.
Perth now.
Yes. And I did it, but my approach to reflexes is so much more refined now. But anyway, every single one of us, all of us, have primitive reflexes. If you have a child, you would have seen one of the first assessments the obstetrician does on the child, the infant, is quick little primitive reflex exam to make sure they're all there. So what does that mean? So we've all seen a baby. When you see a baby born, they don't have much control, do they, at all? Like they're just like a little blob. A blob of these responses, like they don't have control. You see them trying to move. It's just all reflexive kind of impulse-driven movements. There's no smoothness or control. The first thing we learn as an infant is how to hold our head up. All the other things are automatic. So an example of some of the primitive reflexes, you've got to think of them as like a sequence, almost embryological sequence, that once we are in gestation, so once we're developing, and then as we come out, we're born, some should switch off, some should be there for a period of time and then switch off when other more mature neurologic functions turn on. Okay, so there's the fear paralysis reflex, which is like the main reflex, and that is technically meant to switch off automatically when you are born through the vaginal canal. Right? It should just boop off. That then becomes the Moro reflex, which is why they cry, and that's why we often have to wrap them up, because the Moro reflex is linked with the startle reflex. It's the one before the startle reflex. Any sudden stimuli can initiate that reflex, which moves the infant or the human or the adult into extension really fast, and the arms fling up in the air, right? What that does when that reflex turns on is it switches on the entire sympathetic nervous system automatically, fight-flight response. And that's a primal reflex. And the Moro should inhibit or switch off automatically between 2 to 4 months. Then the startle switches on for the next 6 to 12 months. Then the startle should be off. There's a whole heap of other reflexes as well. A common one is, everyone knows, you put your finger in a baby's hand and their fingers clasp around it and you're like, oh, it likes me. It's like, no, that's just a reflex. That's called the palmar reflex. That is obviously, remember, subconscious survival. So they put stimulus. So it basically initiates them to hold on to something. If you think of like holding on to mum, I can't remember when that's meant to hit, but it's within the first 6 months or so. There's the rooting and the sucking reflex. It's an interesting name, but it's basically when the child is born, placed on the mum's chest, And the rooting and sucking reflex should allow the child to move its lips onto the mum's nipple. So there'll be a stimulus of the nipple hitting the cheek that will turn the head, and then they'll start sucking because they can't consciously control that. It's just stimulus. It's all reflex, a blob of reflexes for those first couple of months. They go to the toilet everywhere. There's no control, right? And then gradually, these fine motor functions start to come online. When they do, then those primitive reflexes will automatically switch off. And then you have normal development. Right, there we go. So now what happens if, just going back actually, the fear paralysis reflex, if that doesn't inhibit properly, that reflex is linked to the dorsal vagal response. I don't know if you talk about that much, but that's that sort of immobilization response, which is a very primitive neurological response. And so if someone has reflexes on, and I reckon about 90% of your clients, adults, would have these reflexes on. Now, when I first worked with the reflexes, I was like, no way it's that common. But it is. And how do I know that? Because I was seeing it in my own practice, and having taught over 100 practitioners across the world, they're feeding back to me the exact same statistics. So it's way more common than you think. And we used to think it was because the child didn't develop properly, but no, you can develop normally, but something can happen at any moment. A big trauma or consistent traumas, or just your system just being overloaded, and your brain will switch these reflexes back on without you being aware of it, or your clients, right? And it's like it's like we call it the brain safe mode, right? So it's the brain's like, I don't know what to do. Switch on these reflexes. And so what that does is it brings your nervous system, or your client's nervous system, back to immaturity, in a sense. And so this explains a lot of adult behavior around stress, right? People do these things. Why'd you do that way? They weren't conscious. And so this is one, if you think about, there's lots of things that could cause stress, many things and many types of dysfunctions in the body, in the mind, structure. But these pathways, there is no important neurological pathway. Why? Because the brain decided to do them first. So they must be the most important. That's the foundation, right? And if you're going back to movement, a lot of these, especially the ATNR, the rooting and everything, they tie into how people move. So people try and change movement consciously through movement correction. But if the cause of someone's postural movement being is one of these things, these reflexes have to be corrected.
Can we please go back to one of the very first things you said, was that when a baby is born vaginally, then they naturally go through this, this fear paralysis Moro reflex. So what happens when a baby is born cesarean, which is like I think it's up to more than 78% of pregnancies now end up with a Caesar. So then what happens if that's not happening?
We can make an assumption that if they're not getting that vaginal compression, which activates the skin receptors and everything else, and then tells the brain, okay, switch off, we're going tomorrow now. Yeah. So the trigeminal nerve is a pretty well-known nerve as well, but most people know it for trigeminal neuralgia, which is just one specific condition that it can be related to. But it's a very important nerve as well. It goes to the face. It's really about sensory on the face, and also sound, light sound, and mastication, so moving of the mouth, right, the jaw. It's cranial nerve 5, which I find interesting, and then cranial nerve 10 is the vagus. So if you think 5 to 10, numbers, there's an interesting correlation there. In my mind, everyone knows that the vagus nerve, its primary role is to control that parasympathetic response in the brain, right? It's in charge of that, both the healthy parasympathetic and the not so healthy parasympathetic, which is that vegetative response. The trigeminal, even though it's a sensory nerve to the face, because of its location in the brain and the brainstem and the upper cervical, it can get hyperstimulated, and there's quite a bit of research on it too. It can cause all sorts of issues of pain in the brain or migraines. For instance, trigeminal nerve is always involved in migraines. Like every migraine has a trigeminal nerve sensory issue. It's not everything, but it's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, head pain can actually create stress in the system. And here's the thing about head pain. There's sometimes not invisible, right? Pain that you can't feel, if that makes sense. There's receptors that are related to pain and threat that send signals that are like pain signals, even though there's no such thing as a pain pathway. There's a threat pathway. This information is being sent from the trigeminal nerve to the brain, and it creates this like kind of wind-up effect. So the brain becomes more stressed and more sensitive to pain and things like that, even if they don't have actual head pain. So if we can think, and it's all related to stress. So maybe someone has lower vagal tone, so that means they have higher trigeminal dysfunction. It's not always that simple. I wish the body was that. It's not always that, but it's an interesting correlation. In the brainstem or the cranial nerves, you would say vagus nerve is very much the parasympathetic response, but there are other nerves that do that. But that's like the big one because it goes down and controls all the organs. And the trigeminal nerve is very much related to stress or pain in the brain. And there's even a circuit called the trigeminal pain circuit because it loops with upper cervical, the brainstem, the eyes, the TMJ as well. So chronic TMJ issues can be related. People can have TMJ issues without knowing, like without any pain or anything, or that can coincide with the stress response. So it's just an interesting correlation that, there's more going on, and there's sometimes there's other nerves that could be causing an issue as opposed to just the vagus nerve.
Mm. Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted you to touch on it, because I feel like we get so fixated on this one thing. Let's not get fixated on one thing. Let's keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking questions.
100%.
Mm.
The EPIC approach. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
EPIC. Every piece of information counts.
Mm.
So it's all part of it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Heard that from another functional neurology person back in the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that this type of conversation, it's so important for all of us, to realize for us as movement educators that, and we always say this to our clients, Pilates is just one part of what you do. Pilates isn't the be all and end all. Let it be a really positive part of what you're doing. But, as movement educators, if we can see that there's so many other ways that we can see in the body and see what's happening in the body by learning from other people like you, Nick. So thank you so much for your time. Would you say, like, I know that you've done things with the Movementality crew. Would you say that the work that you do would be beneficial for a movement educator as well? Is it something that they really could, add on to the work that they're doing? And
yeah, of course. I mean, it's an adjunct skill set. It's a different skill set, but it would very much, the knowledge that I teach would actually help you understand the movement in a completely different way, and improve what you're already doing. So there's that, the knowledge, but the skill set is something that you could offer alongside. In fact, some of my best students and practitioners have been primarily Pilates, and now they do both. So they do the clinic side, and they still teach Pilates, and whether they do it clinically or classes or whatever it is. But they were guns, they picked it up really well. So it actually tends to work quite well. I've had other movement professionals as well, and other types of manual therapists. It's really, if you want to learn this stuff, you want to actually learn how the nervous system controls everything, really, and how to actually interact with it, how to assess that. We've got it. We've got a system ready made. You just literally need to come in and learn it and follow the process, and you will figure out how to bring that into your business or your offerings or whatever it is. From it, what I've seen work is you've got your Pilates thing already going. That's just going to keep going, and you add this in, and they can work together. So because if you've got that skill of movement education already, that's an asset. That's an asset because in our phase 3, which is lifestyle optimization, movement is part of that. You can actually coach them properly. A lot of practitioners who come to me who aren't movement people, they're missing that bit. So you already have an advantage. So if you're willing to learn a completely different way of working, 100%, just learn it. It's all there, Spent 15 years building it. So
you're
to
putting
try
it
and
out
make
there.
it easier. To try and make it easier for people to figure out, the noise and figure out what's actually important. What do we need to actually focus on here?
And what does
That's
it
the
look
main
like learning from you? Like what is the courses? Is it like what does the course look like? Do you start with little workshops or do you jump straight in? How do you roll?
Oh, we've got a bit of that stuff as well. There's like little offerings, but primarily we've got a full practitioner education stream. It's one big program, but people can take it in sections. But the foundations is where everyone starts, and that's basically learning all the stuff. A lot of stuff we talked about today: the primitive reflexes, the cranial nerves, the emotions, the whole system. Learning that operating system, and then we go into mastery, where we go much deeper into sort of the immune approach and psychology and things like that, and then bringing it all together. And that is more like a mentorship program with me. But we also look at business, and we'll go deep into your personal health and mindset as well. Because when I work with people, I want to help them clinically, business, and the most important part is personal growth, working on yourself. And a lot of the stuff you can do on yourself, but then also reach out to the community. So it's a very immersive experience at the highest level. But our foundations program is a usual entry point into that, and it's all done online. And once you get into the top level mastery, you get access to in-person events, which we run a few times a year in different places. But it's all can be done online. There's a massive library of techniques and lectures and demonstrations and stuff like that. So, especially in the foundation, it's very systematic. It's just like do this, then do that, do this, do that, and then try it out and just build it in your own practice. And we have a lot of mentoring support, community support, things like that. So a lot of touch points for you because people learn in different ways. So there's questions like, what does this mean? What does that mean? This is what this actually means, etc. So overall, it's done a great job, and there's been people I've never interacted with personally, but they seem to be, in other countries, and they're just like, oh, this is awesome. They're using it properly in their own practice. So we've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Sounds like you're doing good work. So before we sign off, what's your hope for the future of healthcare? Because I feel like this is this type of stuff that people are looking more and more to. So how would you love for healthcare to look in the future?
Well, exactly what you said. We're trying to build the future right here. Is more along these lines of having that holistic approach. Actually, I was talking, you don't have to be like a master of everything, but when you're working with someone, you got to look at all the different dimensions of who they are, and you have to adopt different roles as the professional as well. Sometimes you're a technician, which is in understanding and application. Sometimes most important one is probably need to be a listener. Sometimes you need to be a coach and a mentor. Sometimes you need to be a somatic therapist, like how you're holding things. Sometimes you're investigating. And the great practitioners, the truly elite ones, they just glide between those roles. Sometimes it comes naturally, but you can develop it. And I developed it. Some things were natural, some things I had to work for. And that way you're truly working with the person in front of you. Why do I work on the nervous system? Because I'm like, oh, I just want to understand how things work. So like the nervous system just appeared, was like, I'm the solution. So I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to focus on you for about 10 years then. So everything's pointing, and that was 10 years ago. And I go, all right, this is going to be massive in 10 years. And look at where we are. So it's going to be massive again in another 10 years. So if you were someone that wanted to future-proof your career as a practitioner, get into the nervous system stuff now. So don't see it going anywhere. In fact, to get to a point where if the professional, no matter what their modality is, doesn't know about it, they might not have people coming to them. So it's, looking at people holistically, treating the person, finding the most efficient way of working with someone without pummeling them or over giving them too many things. Less is more. Less is more. Less is more. That's my sort of main thing. And there's certain things that are happening in the future that we can't stop, like technology, AI, and things. Learning to embrace those things and use them when needed, but then not lose contact with the natural world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that
put me on the
message.
spot there.
No, that's all right. That's right. We want human conversation. Embrace AI, but let's have human conversations, which are just organic and make you think too.
Yeah, well, AI can help you if you know. It can actually make you smarter if you know how to use it, but you shouldn't rely on it. And yeah, we should. I think it will go back to more connection and more. People need that, the community, the connection. That's why I like this conversation here. There's no notes. It's just talking. Just seeing what's there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose hope for the future is like more people aligned with their own passions or their dreams, which means they're going to be happier. The world's going to be a happier place. Not working so hard, not that's old school mentality. Is like working smarter, working in sprints as opposed to marathons, which pushes you into that exhaustion phase.
Yeah, I love all that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nick Moss, for your time. Appreciate you. I know that you're a busy boy. You'll find Nick on his website, functionalneurohealth.com. Just make sure that you check out the show notes. Nick will share all of this with you, and you can share whatever you want with your community just to put the word out there whenever you want. But thanks so much for joining us. I know that our listeners will really get a lot out of this conversation, and I'm sure it will create some more curiosity, which is what this show is all about. Thanks, folks. My name is Katie Crane, the Pilates professional.
Awesome.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, dude.